Hello and welcome to the Digitize Fully Charged Podcast. My name is Niall Ridgway and I'm joined as always by Pam Curry. Now today's guest is the awesome Caroline Keep. I've known Caroline for a number of years now and she is doing absolutely incredible things in the world of edtech, in the world of AI research. Caroline is also supporting and giving a voice to so many of our young people who have additional support needs as well. So I know you're going to love today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Something that we're going to start trying out is asking people to, if you're listening to the podcast, please take a wee screenshot, share it online, share it on your stories. Doesn't need to be a main post. And let us know that you're listening. We really do appreciate it. So without much further ado, I know you're going to love today's episode. Let's jump in and hear from Caroline.
So we're delighted today to be joined by Caroline Keep. Caroline, we always just start the podcast by asking our guests to tell our audience a bit about you. So if you could just dive into that for us just now. Just tell us about you. How did you get into this? Where are you at in your career just now? And what's your kind of backstory would be great.
Oh, thank you both for having me. And yeah, mine's complicated. It always feels like a big question, this does, doesn't it? I mean, originally I was in engineering.
Right.
I'm an engineer by trade. I was in geotechnical engineering for a long time. And then I changed over into teaching, having done a year of research with Liverpool John Moores University, trying to get the kids back in the early 2000s into tech and building their own sensors and devices, and did a whole bunch of research with them.
Great.
Wow.
I'm from the maker community, so I'm a maker by heart.
Yep.
So I retired this year. I ran Liverpool Makefest, the biggest maker get together for a decade.
Wow.
And I ran OggCamp, the open source, with Dan Lynch for a decade. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of that kind of techie crowd.
Sure.
Raspberry Pis, 3D printers, hands-on tech, physical computing for a good 20 years, maybe longer. I really wanted to get kids into using technology in more interesting ways and kind of give them the access to the tools that I wanted them to have.
Yep.
But I realised that doing it with kind of university students that are a bit old and sort of set in their ways a little, quite often they can get very much like, no, I've come in to do, animal ecology. What's tech got to do with this?
Yep.
So I kind of, much to the shock of everybody at the time, I retrained and went into teaching, secondary teaching.
Right.
Wow.
And did physics, and then did physics and tech and DT and computing. And I did that for another decade. And I put the first makerspace in a school in the country in 2017, 2018.
Brilliant.
Oh, wow. And what was that like then?
It was quite hard work at the time because, to be honest, it was like nobody knew what I was talking about in 2015-ish. Everybody was like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And it was really niche in the maker community. There wasn't many, but I was part of, as I still am today, part of Does Liverpool, which is one of the oldest makerspaces in Britain. So I had a good example to lead my head teacher around so that they could see. And then it kind of just blossomed from there. We went out and did a kind of tech run and got a lot of Raspberry Pis. Pete Lomax opened it for me from Raspberry Pi. A lot of the kind of tech community I knew. So I got a lot of support. And since then it's sort of spread out. More schools open them, places like Neston and lots of other maker spaces open. So I still occasionally advise a school on opening a makerspace.
What does it look like? Is it like a computer suite or is it like a wall of 3D printers? What does a makerspace look like?
A makerspace generally, I did some guidance for the government on Liverpool Makefest and actually a cover in detail what makerspaces look like on there. It's on libraries, makerspace.gov.uk when I set them up in libraries. But basically, a makerspace is pretty much any technology or equipment that you want to build things with. It's really about the project. It's not about the kit.
Okay.
So lots of schools make the mistake. I had a school just recently being like, oh, we've got this much funding and it's a huge amount of money. And I was like, give up all the funding now. You can abandon all of that. Like, we're not going to spend it. No, you're not going to spend it. Let's get some microbits. Let's figure out what PCs you've got. Let's find some cardboard. That's what you're going to find. And it's like, so to be honest, it's never about the kit that you've got. And a lot of makerspaces do tool runs and tool drives. So they ask parents to donate, if you've got hammers or you've got screwdrivers, you've got things, and parents do.
Yeah.
So most of them are very community spaces that anything gets built in. And craft tends to cross over quite a lot. So a lot of things like sewing and knitting and crochet and anything can cross over into a makerspace. It doesn't really matter. It's about what you want to build and being around people who are building things.
I love that. So you could be making things like digital clothes as well, I guess. You could be incorporating microbits into t-shirts.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I've done loads and loads of projects over the years with kids. You know, I started doing outreach on makerspaces. I built the Kittronics robots kits with Kittronics team that became really stupidly popular. And then, you know, I built a lot of the kind of introduction kits. I worked with Raspberry Pi and Microbit and all the rest of them to kind of build a lot of those kind of projects that kids could get hands-on with tech. Because it isn't just about the screen. So, you know, that'd be pretty boring. Most people who use technology want to build something. So, you know, it was just encouraging kids to get into building things. And then from there, I started to become increasingly aware, probably in the last years of my time when I was building maker spaces across schools, that like a lot of my kids were neurodivergent all the time. And then I got diagnosed as autistic and ADHD in my mid-30s. And so that became a good focus to try and encourage, you know, young people to have more inclusive education. So I got involved in that.
Can we talk about that, Caroline? Can we actually dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, of course you can.
So that fascinates me because we've noticed the same thing. So we run a lot of tech-focused, digital-focused, tech jams, we call them, similar stuff. And it's very
jam-packed. Neurodivergent kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like we're talking here about the most in-demand kind of career areas, and yet we're also talking about kids that are largely failed by the mainstream education system. So that for me is like just fascinating, and I guess for you too.
So for me, it became, I mean, it's like a decade ago I did that. So for me, when I came out as autistic ADHD, it was just literally after I'd got the TESS award for my makerspace. It was you know, and that's like the gold standard award in teaching. I was pleased, but it was literally then I felt comfortable, like, okay, I can tell you all I'm autistic and ADHD now. I've kind of, you can't take anything away from me now. So to be honest, that's quite common. You get to that stage where you feel like you're very established and then you can talk about it. You know, and I think, to be honest, by then it had become perfectly clear to me why those spaces were really essential for neurodivergent kids. And most schools contain things like sports or enrichment clubs or netball or football, but rarely was there a space where a kid with a particular, you know, interest or hyperfocus could go and just be like, I want to code this IoT device that, you know, replicates, you know, Minecraft worlds because I want to be able to do this thing. That just didn't exist. So when I started going out on schools and doing outreaches and also like helping schools set up their makerspaces and using our makerspace to expand them, it became really obvious that those kids use that as a space to escape from everything else. So during breaks and lunches, it was always packed. Do you know what I mean? And that tends to happen if you open a little makerspace in your school anyway. It's packed with neurodivergent kids in the breaks and after school clubs. And it's a good social setting for us because really socializing is particularly tricky at the best of moments. Normally you're kind of masking that you're neurodivergent. It's exhausting. There's school bells, there's people, there's change. It's full on. But you could always walk into a makerspace and the conversation is about the project you're building. It's not necessarily about you. And on top of that, everybody's there for building projects. So that it just really makes that kind of social setting much easier. So there's been a fair bit of research on that now that shows it's really quite beneficial for neurodivergent kids to have access to make spaces.
Absolutely. And the research from Edinburgh University as well came about 2 months ago or so, saying that neurodivergent people have an easier time communicating with others who are neurodivergent because you're not having to mask. You have those same hyper focus, but it doesn't matter what that focus is. You're able to communicate in ways that are easier with each other.
I mean, I think I said it like, I'm an avid social media Twitterer, aren't I? And I think I said it this morning. I was like, if all your friends are neurodivergent, I have news for you. It's like, so.
Yeah. So true, by the way.
Because we tend to flock together.
Yeah.
So a lot of us who are neurodivergent tend to make neurodivergent friends because communication is much easier, expectations are similar, and we can have that kind of fluid neurodivergent communication with each other. And that means that becomes much easier to do. It's just more on the same vibe.
Yeah.
So because of that, you tend to get crowds of these kids who flock together and teachers who are similar flock together. And this just gave them space. That was it.
Yeah.
It was never kind of like intended to be, it was like build the things that you want to build, but it gave them space to build the things that they wanted to build. Yeah. One of the most popular things I think that I ever did in any makerspaces when I did it in one of my very first schools, I had like a mini setup back then before it became official. And that was like D&D groups.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Open a Dungeons and Dragons enrichment. You'll get all the neurodivergent kids in it and they'll all love it.
And they'll love it.
That was my favorite.
It's such an important thing though, isn't it? Because actually, if you're talking about neurodivergent kids have told us that they just don't find it easy to make friends. They don't, and parents have told us that the summer sessions we ran are so good for their child to socialize and meet friends. And it's made me think that it's actually a kind of service we need to provide, like not from the tech and digital point of view, but from the point of view of collaboration and, peer group and friends.
Yeah. I mean, Makerspace is really at the core about people. It's not really about the space or the tech. And it's one of the first things I really tell people. It's about the people that you gather together around kind of common causes and communities that you want to be part of. And that's really important, for neurodivergent kids. There's some excellent research about Edinburgh on the Nest project about neurodivergent peer groups as well.
Right.
That's a really good one to look at if you're in a school setting up a neurodivergent peer group. Okay. And, a decade ago, this didn't exist, but now it's suddenly becoming common. So people are coming back to me now being like, oh, I remember you did this. This was really, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did. So it's like, back then it was, I was very much like, I think it felt like the only autistic teacher out there who was public. Yeah. And now it's kind of, there's a little bit more now than there used to be.
Sure.
Yeah. But I mean, things like Nicole's Pomfers, just on her research, and she's just put hers out, show that still, I think it was something today, like 31% of all who are neurodivergent teachers still too concerned to be open about the neurodivergency or mental health issues within schools. So it's not, and I hear that a lot. Lots of teachers coming to me on DMs or in conversations or catching me to say, oh, I'm ADHD or I've just got a diagnosis of autism, but I'm too frightened to tell anybody. So we're kind of getting there, but we're not quite there.
Yeah, so people are starting to recognize that they have these neurodivergent needs that are out there. I guess it's then kind of building that confidence around that and being able to share that.
Yeah, and I think that became quite a critical part, really, of my career moving forward. It became kind of the advocacy stuff that I do on the sort of side, but it then sort of like merged into more part of the core, just because I did more and more of that. And then I started to get increasingly worried about how we were going to start using AI. So then I went back and did data scientist masters and now doing my PhD in AI. So now I'm doing research that looks at digitizations of school as a whole.
Great.
Right.
So how all of school uses digital technologies.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit more about that? That sounds fascinating.
I remember saying to, I think it was one of the team at TESS, I'm really bothered about this. And they were like, why would you be bothered about that? It's not even a thing. And it was back before ChatGPT became a thing. And I'm like, no, this is going to become a thing. So I went in and I thought, okay, I can do this. I'm a techie. And then kind of like got into the vein of it. And then one of the first things I did during my master's was look at whether you can predict underperformance in schools. and whether if you used enough data, you could do it. And I kept it to one side and didn't publish it at the time because I was very concerned about the results of it. You know, you could, and you can to about 87%. But the problem is with it is that it really narrowed down to if you were doing over 8 subjects at GCSE and you were in a particular group, either if you were in an Ascend group or you were in a pupil premium group or you were just above the pupil premium threshold, that the likeliness is that you might end up being in the underperformance group. And the conclusion to it was very much like, well, if you reduce it down to 5 GCSEs, they'll do better. And it was around about then that I realised there was some really ethical, questionable stuff going to happen with this.
Yeah.
So it was around about then that I thought, I'll probably need to really examine what is really going on with all of schools tech, the whole infrastructure, the lot.
Yeah.
So I went out and first did like a systematic review of all of the tech and all of the kind of school research that's out there that looks at tech and where we overlap so I could get some commonality, and then surveyed 150 teachers across the country, and then spoke to at length 50 experts in educational technology across the country, all anonymously, so it was all off record. Everything from the teacher in the back of Beyond that's kind of like working in a little kind of classroom in the middle of nowhere. The SEND school specialist that's, you know, out there, to people in government policy roles, people with huge budgets, trust leads, head teachers, Senkos, specialists, everybody in between.
So that's a massive breadth then,
massive breadth. I also added to them a very small subset, I think it was at 10 out of the 50, who were Edtech professionals, who are kind of like those in who own CTOs and company leads, and those who were in policy or policy development. So it was quite a massive range of people. And I remember my researchers saying to me, oh, you know, what are you going to learn from this? Like, you know, I remember one saying to me, what are you going to learn? You know, will they talk? will they talk? You know, sometimes it can be a bit hard going, will they talk? And I laughed quite hard because within the first 5 interviews, I realized that, they would talk.
They will talk.
They would talk like never before. They would talk. Like I thought it'd be like, maybe I'll ask 10 questions and I'll get like, 30 minutes. No, we had 2-3 hour conversations with people. They were intensive in their discussion.
Do you think people just wanted to get things off their chest, or?
I think a lot of them, because I designed it very open questions that didn't lead anybody anywhere. And they were the kind of questions that I felt needed asking open, so they could take it any direction they wanted. And the minute that you did ask that, everybody had a lot to say. And so it really took me I think it must have been about 8-9 months to do the research where you code all of the answers to those questions. And then the survey data took another 6 months. So it took a long time to do, but it's as one of my profs said, it's probably one of the most detailed data sets that he's ever seen. Because I did it in a real aughty way. So I went to town on it to make sure it was perfect. But it's come up with a lot of interesting conversation. And also because I wanted anonymity to be a key part of it, it meant that everybody got to say exactly what they wanted to say in the most honest way they could, without fear of fear of it being misrepresented, or everybody trusted me with it. And I felt really honoured for that.
Are you able to share any insights?
I can share a few insights on that now. So I'm at the stage where I'm just sort of writing, so I can share quite a few. So we asked about 10 questions in there, ranging from ones for what did you think SEND technology was? What do you think the best is? Or, what do you think policy is like with educational technology? What do you think about adoption? What do you think about CPD? And basically the range of questions, anybody could open them and you code them separately. But from the survey data we did with 150 teachers, they got to grade their tech, which is probably, I think, the first time anybody's asked teachers to grade tech overarchingly. And, there's a couple of interesting things in there, really. So things like SEND technology is the lowest graded tech. So Send technology is the one we're most dissatisfied with. And also things like our infrastructure we're pretty dissatisfied with, and our CPD offers we're pretty dissatisfied with. We don't like that tech. It comes in at like an F. But, you know, some of the best tech that we've got, I'll kind of have a little mooch so I can remember exactly what the best tech is that we've got, because to be honest, it's a massive it's a huge amount, but I can tell you pretty much some of the best tech that we've got across the entire. One of the on a side note, while I'm looking this up, one of the interesting things was, and I thought that this would be like for sure this would happen, I thought private schools would grade tech differently than state schools, because I thought like everybody, they'll have more money, so they'll be able to. Nope.
Really?
There's no difference between a private school's experience of tech or a public school.
When you say just while you're finding this as well, when you say kind of best and worst, is that how it's being used? Is that the specifications on the tech, like how much RAM it has, the hard drive, that kind of stuff?
Well, that was what the interviews were for. So they got asked to rate it as their experience of tech overall if they were to give it a grade.
Okay.
So this is them judging overall their experience of tech, different areas of tech that we'd normally use it in. And the grades, broadly, consensus on average was about a C for all kinds of techs. The top tech actually was the assets and equipment came in quite high. So all of our assets and equipment we quite like. Things like the building security tech we like. And health and safety tech we're pretty good on. So
that's great.
They get relatively good higher scores. But there's a significant statistical difference post-hoc, so 0.01, between the lowest performing professional development and infrastructure domains and the highest performance safety and student-facing tech. So we're happier with student-facing tech than we are with infrastructure, but the big ones that are the worst tech that we think are our CPD, our infrastructure, our Send, and actually our HR. So they're the ones we're not satisfied with. They get the more of the lower band grades than the top tech for teachers. So that was better. But then when I got into the interviews, you could see that why. So when you get into kind of like deep interviewing with everybody, and I did what's called a thematic with a big network map on this, so you can see how it's all related, but I can kind of talk generally about it. For Send, one of the biggest problems with technology for Send students is the limited amount of training we get for Send. And then the limited amount of training we have on how Send is used with technology. So that particular crossover, the actual like pedagogy that we have is not there really for that particular link. So we haven't got the understanding of Send, and we also have generally kind of limited understanding in the tech area. So then when they meet, it tends to kind of collapse in a heap. So, you know, that was one of the big ones. And the next biggest one in the Send category was our expectations. We have, we're not secure enough in what our expectations of Send young people should be. And that's understandable when I look at it through my neurodivergency lens. Because, you know, a perfect example is me and my daughter. I've got autism and ADHD. My daughter's got autism and ADHD. She is radically different than me. Radically different. And that's completely normal in kind of the world of neurodivergency, that you can have two people who have the same diagnosis who have completely different needs. That's why autism is a spectrum, because our needs can vary. So when it comes to looking at it from a tech point of view, you can't really layer on and be like this tech for autistic students, or this tech for ADHD students, or this tech for dyslexia, because it doesn't really work like that. And a lot of the time, a lot of the technology is pitched in a way for neuronormative expectations. So we want you to do this social setting. We want you to be able to, you know, have this training so you can get better at socializing, even though actually it doesn't kind of work, because we socialize just fine with each other. It's a type of socializing, not I'm trying to be neurotypical. So there's a kind of mismatch there with the Send Tech all around.
So do you think that for the Send Tech, that either that we should have more different options of hardware and software for our learners, or is it that our educators aren't using the tech creatively enough for our students?
I think our educators are using it creatively enough, but I think really the tech isn't being designed in a way that is useful for teachers. And on top of that, I think there is the overarching system that our schools sit in, and the way that we actually encounter Send overarchingly is from a almost deficit mindset. So it tends to not be neuroaffirming in a way that would work for us in the first place. So actually, a lot of the most basic interventions are the better interventions. Some of the most popular tech across all of the interviews that you could do in this, across all of the areas, actually most of the most examples that people gave me of the most life-changing tech was in things that made it accessible. So it was in basic accessibility. Basic accessibility itself. So like things
text
like
to speech or something.
Text to speech, captions. You know, have you alt texted things? You know, I said it a couple of weeks ago. How often do you alt text your PowerPoint presentations? Probably not. So these are basic accommodations that normally in the world of disability you'd see all the time. But we don't really see them in education. So a lot of these kinds of things are really the things that we should be working towards. It's not necessarily your fancy, you know, full-blown robot that is apparently going to teach autistic kids social skills. It's not. You know, actually, what's probably better is just, you know, setting up a neurodivergent peer group.
Absolutely.
So there's like...
That's something Niall noticed as well when we were doing, like, we did a big tour around Scotland of, like, training with educators, and it was surprising how many people weren't aware of basic accessibility features.
We thought it was going to be like the opening 10 minutes and then we would move on to other things. And honestly, it took up the whole session because it blew people's minds that they had these tools in front of them and available to them for free. And it was just built in and they could like press a button and go. And it became like a huge focus of these sessions that we did think at the start was just going to be quick. Here's a recap. Here's how you do it and go.
No. And I mean, that's the big one really that I want people to go away with. I mean, one of the things everybody pretty much said across the interviews was pick a major platform. Doesn't even matter which one. You know, there wasn't kind of a preference on there. Pick one and then learn all the accessibility features. That is probably the best tech advice I can give you, having interviewed everybody extensively for a long amount of time.
That's a fascinating insight.
That is as well, and it backs up something that I've been saying is that once you know how to use one platform, a lot of the other platforms will be very similar. So if you learn how to adjust the text size on one platform, how to use the speech to text, how to change overlays on, say, Microsoft, for example. When you switch over to Apple, when you switch over to any of the Google ecosystems, it's very similar for what you're able to do.
Yeah, and I think that key accessibility factor is the one that we're missing. I think we think that it involves spending hundreds of thousands of pounds making more expensive tech, getting new platforms, getting new things. Actually, I've not seen that really bore out. And to be honest, a lot of it has been, you know, really, some of it was really hard going, I think, and I'm finding it hard going. But I mean, I've got past the kind of interview bits, but some of it was really hard going to write, if I'm honest. Just because a lot of it is, you know, quite controversial, that sounds pretty bad. You know, it's like some of it has been really interesting to write, you know, and from a teacher's perspective, I've felt it. From a researcher's perspective, I've been like, this is gold.
Like,
you know, it's like trying to sit in the middle. You know, and one of them has been, you know, that on that about not spending hordes of money on stuff and just picking the platform and learning it really well is, you know, things like, you know, the question on Edtech. That, you know, how Edtech companies have affected how we use digital tech. And that really I've got an entire bit on. That is a complicated, uneasy relationship.
Sure.
You know, we do have a complicated relationship with EdTech itself, in that a lot of it is, you know, commercially driven. Many of it's for profit.
Yep.
It doesn't sit naturally in the kind of aims of educators. We haven't developed the digital pedagogy to go with this, really. And there's a lot of ethical questions that we need answering just right now to kind of justify the amount of tech that we're using. And, you know, when often people would say to me like, you know, get a whole bunch of tech and I'm going to set up a makerspace and I'm going to do this. And I'd encourage them not to spend all that tech. Or sometimes they'd be like, oh, we're going to make this massive change. And I'd say, well, why don't you improve your toilets? Do you know what I mean? I had one of my experts say to me, you know, if a tech's going to be in a school, it's got to be as reliable as a toaster. I absolutely loved that. And it's so true.
Yeah.
So
really
that's what I want. You know, I want something that is absolutely reliable, but also in the ethos of an inclusive education. You know, it's no good getting, you know, really expensive kind of platform that does for assessment if it's never been tested on SEND kids and then you just give it to SEND kids. It's like, and you do see that a lot in the kind of debate in AI was in mine a lot because you had this transfer during my PhD into the AI era, you know, where ChatGPT came out. So mine hit right in the middle of the early stages of it.
Sure.
And that came out quite strong. But there's quite a lot of questions there about, and I think I wrote a blog a couple of weeks ago on it, that I'm very lucky that one of my friends, Francis, has just put up, I think, on School Weekly as the blog of the year. I was like, oh, thank you.
Nice one.
So a shout out, Fran. But basically, it was that AI isn't trained to understand autistic communication.
Okay.
And that seems like a shock to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be. As somebody who's used AI to build this, by the way. So I used all of that data and I built a system using AI to predict what tech works and what doesn't.
All right.
And I'm making it open source so people can use it themselves. At the end of it, they'll be able to put in their scores for their school and it'll predict based on 50 schools who all mapped out their systems so you can see how it works.
Fantastic.
But basically, a lot of the kind of standard LMMs, so large language models, they're actually use things like positive reinforcement from coders to become more human. But in doing that, they get coded neurodivergent and neurotypically, and therefore lose the ability to communicate in neurodivergent ways, even though they're much more like neurodivergents than they are like neurotypicals. So they're basically coded to be neurotypical. So if you kind of have a question that you ask, I'm probably going to ask it in quite a blunt, literal way.
Yeah.
And if you do it a couple of times with an AI, actually it'll assume that you're being challenging. It'll assume that you're being direct in certain ways. So, and I think I do write a whole blog on the way that we do.
That's fascinating, actually. Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't quite know what you meant by that when you started talking about it, but yeah.
Yeah. So the way that they code them is to reinforce them.
Okay,
so LMMs naturally give the blunt answer factually. That's it.
Sure. Yeah.
But we code them to sound more.
Yep.
Friendly.
Nice.
Yeah.
But because we code them to sound more nice, we code them to be more neurotypical in their answers to things. So then when you're autistic using it, it becomes problematic.
Right.
So so there's that in itself has a few concerns in the long run. Sure, if you're adopting systems that are large language models that you're using with neurodivergent kids, and then you're getting them to be trained to talk more neurotypical via AI. You can see where this is going, and you can see it's probably a bad thing.
Yeah.
Mainly because masking has such a massive impact on us for our mental health and our well-being. It's detrimental in every way. And it, you know, I think I've spoke to a couple of, I think I did might come out at some point, but I don't know. I did an interview with Bloomberg over it.
Right.
Over the, you know, you see this in the perfect example of this is that large language models tend to talk when they write. They tend to write in a very neurodivergent type way.
Right.
Which means that lots of researchers and lots of people who are writing are being accused of being AI because they write like an AI.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So you're getting lots and lots of autistic neurodivergent students now getting holed up at university being like, an AI wrote this, and you're like, no.
Wow.
And I ran several of my papers through an AI checker. I am totally an AI. I was an AI in like 2015. I was an AI in 2010. I have been an AI this whole time.
What sort of like language patterns and what would identify like a neurodiverse person as an AI then?
We tend to use a bit more brusque and clipped language. Okay. We tend to have less of what would be deemed as like the social niceties. So I'm much more likely to write, what is digital citizenship? Like, or send, give me the acronym for that, in a very blunt way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm talking to a machine, while somebody who's neurotypical might actually write, can you tell me what this would be?
Yes.
I'm much more likely to miss all of that language. So that in itself leads to this kind of brusque sort of direct language, to the point sort of discussion. And that's one of the struggles why we all struggle writing emails. You know what I mean? I hate writing emails. Like my answer to every email is, all right. Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. Thumbs. Yeah. Thumbs is a favorite. Thumbs for everything. Yep. Yeah. I can answer that with a thumb. Yeah. Good.
But then there's so many like negative connotations of sending just a thumbs up. Like people read so many different things into that. Yeah. When in actual fact, you're meaning great.
I'm just meaning great. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's what I mean by that. But that's the thing. A lot of the time, people assume that there's because neurotypicals talk in a way where there's a language and an intention in between the lines. Yeah. With us, there's no language or intention in between the lines. If I've said something, I've just said it. That's exactly what I meant. I meant nothing else. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? There's no hidden agenda with me. It's just exactly as I said it. That's what I said. Yeah. So. What we tend to do though with LMMs is we do reinforcement training on large language models that then encourage them to adopt these more neurotypical language patterns. Sure. And that can affect you in the long run. So that's just like one example. There's several examples of these, and you can see things in like it when we build tech. I've seen, I think I gave a talk to the National Autistic Society on the dangers that we may face with AI. And some of the things that may be good and some of the things that may be bad. And you can see it in things like people building tech to identify AI, using AI to identify autistics based on previous diagnosed autistics.
Right.
Now, this you'd think could be good. You'd be like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. But the problem with that is that we have mostly diagnosed young white men with autism and all of our diagnostic materials on that and all of our previous research is on that. And we've virtually ignored women and people of color or anybody else. So it may end up just coming out with AI that says, well, if you're a young white man, who's into trains, well done, you've got autism. But if you're anybody else, you're not. So there's things that you have to be careful about perpetuating these biases. And that's where I think my real passion with tech is. I love tech overarchingly in school, but one of the pieces of the framework I've ended up developing is to ask teachers really about the ethical questions around this. Because I feel like the ethical part is the bit that we really miss. We haven't really had those discussions yet. I didn't want to, normally when you create an educational framework, you get kind of like, do this, do that, do the other. I kind of moved away from that. I was like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to ask you a whole bunch of questions. So mine just asks questions and then gives you a score at the end based on your questions. And it's things like, have you considered whether you can have your kids opt out of a data policy?
Okay. Yeah.
Did you ask parents whether, you wanted to use this particular AI and whether they were okay? Is it accessible for all your students?
Yeah.
And these are questions where you think the answer's yes, but then when you go into it, it's
even just a little digging leads to a no. Yeah.
And, that's a perfect example. I'm going to adopt this assessment tech. And I'm going to adopt it and I'm going to get it and it's going to give me answers and it's going to answer my 6 mark questions. And then I don't need to tick them because the system will do it automatically. It'll save me all this time. wicked. That'd be good if assessment design with tech actually took into consideration A, neurodivergent children, which often it doesn't, and B, actually wasn't narrowing our expectations down to tick boxes and 6 marks questions. Because anybody who knows anything about assessment knows that it's a really complicated area. And that narrowing it down further and further and further is probably not, is that truly assessing our kids? That kind of tech? Or are we just narrowing our expectations of assessment to fit the tech? Which actually is a big valid question. That was one of the biggest ones for assessment design, that our assessment designs are becoming narrower because our expectation is that we use the tech. So the tech's driving the assessment, not necessarily us driving the type of assessments we want to say. And that's just like one little bit where you've got to say, is it like that? No, when I tell people like the first kind of assessments that you can see for multiple choice were designed by the army. So, like, so, this isn't like a nuanced thing. One of my favorite books to read on this is The Empire of Normality by Robert Chapman, who talks about where our ideas of normal come from. And you think that bell curve is like, we know the bell curve and it's 0.5% and that's it. And that's how, no, that is not a thing. This is a made up thing, guys. Go away. All of your assumptions on what a p-value is, all of your assumptions on what normal is. There is no standardized normal. We've invented it.
Completely made up.
Yeah, we've invented it. We've invented it to make our lives easier. So, that's why when you go, right, I'm going to pick this assessment type tech, you've got to ask the questions. Well, did you use SEND kids, dyslexic kids, autistic kids in your data sets when you designed this? Did you try and adapt it in some way? Did you try and get their gauge? Because they might not get that.
No.
And I think I seen a couple of days ago a perfect example of this, and it was probably one of my other autistic advocates out there, and he put up I can't remember which one, so forgive me. He put up a picture of, and it was a kid, and the question had been, draw a clock with 10 past 11 on.
Right.
And the kid had drawn a digital clock with 10 past 11 on.
Right.
And the teacher had marked it wrong.
What?
And and it was like, this is just a perfect example. That's a clock with 10 past 11 on.
Yep, of course. They've answered it.
As far as I'm concerned, you have completed the assignment.
Yes.
You understood the question.
Yeah.
That is the assignment. You did it. Well done.
Yep.
But obviously they had an expectation that it would be a clock with a face, and they'd not done it, and they'd done a digital clock instead of an analog, and therefore didn't get the mark. But it's little things like this. You never know how it's going to come across the minute you broaden the range and the minute you look at it from that perspective. And you see it all the time. And to be honest, we have it all the time. I had it in, I think everybody had a good laugh at me over this one. I do it all the time.
Right.
It was like, we had this moment where I had to go see a physiotherapist because I have end-load hours. So I'm slightly bendy in too many places. And I had to go see a physio. And there's a picture, I'll send it to you now so you can post it because it's absolutely hilarious. And I used it as an example of why I needed teachers to think about their explicit teaching carefully. Like, I really need you to think really carefully when you're explicitly teaching. And my physio had said to me, your shoulder's really bad. He'd have me down. And he said, stand up on the couch and put your head down here. Right. So I stood up on the couch, and I'll demonstrate it for you slightly. I got to the end of the couch. You imagine a couch. He's pointed down there. Go, get your head down there. And I've gone, okay. So I stand up and put my head like this. Like on a couch. Stood up. Just like. Right. And I'm like, I'm sat there. And he was like, what are you doing? I was like, you told me to stand up and put my head on the couch.
Yeah.
I stood up.
This is what I've done.
My head on the couch. This is what that looks like. So I'm bent over with my forehead on the couch. And he was like,
and what did he actually want you to do?
No, I meant lie down. Lie down and put your head at that end. And I was like, that is not what you said. Like, that is not what you said at all. So he had a good laugh, and then he was like, yeah, I have to work on my autistic communication.
Yep.
I was like, yes, you do, because I did exactly what you said to do. So we got, literally, I took a picture of myself afterwards and posted it up. Was like, this is why explicit teaching matters.
Yep.
So when you kind of like put things together, or even when you're using tech and you're looking at it, just look at it and go, right, how could you misinterpret this?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Or is it actually saying what I want it to say, or is it actually doing what I want it to do? And I think that's one of the big challenges we've got with tech. A lot of it is geared in this way that isn't quite as explicit about what we need it to be, or quite as explicit about what we need it to cover, and doesn't quite align with, I think, what most educators would view as what we want from education.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've got to move away from being just given what we're given.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to be kind of very directed, I think.
Where should somebody get started that already has their tech? So based on your research that you've got, is it applying different techniques to support those neurodivergent learners in their class with the technology? Is it having conversations with their higher ups about how CPD could be adjusted across the local authority, across the council, across the schools? Where should teachers get started to make that difference for their learners around technology?
Well, I actually do cover that, because as I said, I've done your entire plan for that, so I do cover it. I mean, to be honest, you know, based on we've had 3 major schools do case studies on mine already, so they'll be telling you a bit about what they did and how they look at it. But I'd probably say generalizing across them, the first step is to audit your tech that you existingly have. And reduce the tech that isn't working.
Great.
So if you're a high-performing school and you're using a lot of tech, you're not going to gain anything from using more tech.
Okay, sure.
You're going to gain something from using less tech. You're going to gain something from refining your tech down to what actually is really working and really digging deep into that tech.
Okay.
If you're a middling school, you might benefit from a bit more tech, but it's going to be in very specific areas. If you're a school who's using absolutely no tech, then you've got the most ability to gain something from using tech.
Yeah.
But yet again, your best bet is to start by auditing everything that you've currently got.
Yes.
So that's one. And also, one of the things that became absolutely clear is all tech has and I think I call it a depreciation zone.
Sure. Yeah.
So all tech has about 3-4 years before it depreciates.
Okay.
So basically it becomes non-usable, non-functional. It's not going to perform as well within a 3-4 year bracket.
Yep.
So really you've got to build that into your planning. Okay. In 3-4 years, this won't be as good.
No. Yeah.
You know, and really you should be reviewing it year upon year to be able to make sure you get the best out of it. But the first thing to do is just to audit what you've got.
Yeah.
Is what we got working? And if it isn't working, get rid of it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the first step. And then from there really is to, you know, start then having a look at what your priorities are as an individual school.
Okay.
You know, what do you think your priority is as an individual school among all your staff? What do you think is the kind of priorities you could get? Because quite often I've seen that things like basic digital accessibility and, you know, how to use Excel properly and how to send emails late night and, you know, and have them send in the morning and, you know, all of those kind of things, having enough time to do the CPD, having it embed over a long amount of time, if it's an adoption of one tech, all of these things were absolutely brilliant and what everybody wanted.
Sure.
But what they tended to get up top was, oh, we'll buy this tech, we'll buy that tech, we'll buy this tech, and then we'll implement them all and they'll all be good.
Sure.
So it's really a lot lower key than we thought, I think. It's not as all singing, all dancing tech as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a lot of the basics.
Okay.
So I'd start with that. You know, things like, you know, of your governors, are they using kind of emails? This sounds stupid, but this is a thing. So, you know, this was a lot of them where it's like tech overload had happened, where lots of tech had been implemented over time and nobody was quite sure of what was really working and what wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I'd do.
That links in something, what I was doing. I was putting out a newsletter for my school, and I had it all locked down just for our ecosystem within the school. But a lot of the staff then weren't able to access that through the different devices they were using, because it was logging into a different ecosystem, and there's all these things are talking. So actually, it was making everything really difficult for them, when it could have just been a PDF attached to an email, and then they go from there. And so that's something I'm having to really look at, is how to make things easier for everyone.
And I think it's also this kind of level of integration as well, because when you audit everything in its entirety and think about it, then you think about how everything integrates with it. You know, this is why main platform became like the key word when everybody got asked about adoption, because if you get one platform and it's just whichever one it is, it doesn't even matter. You know, Apple, Microsoft, Google, doesn't matter which one you pick. But at least that way they experienced a level of integration across things, because then they just adopted that one.
It was just
and that just works better overarchingly than doing this thing where they had bits of tech all over the place. You know, and that was better for it. But a lot of it was, you know, really the infrastructures that were there were not quite as robust as we'd like them to be. You know, infrastructure, pedagogical, content, ethics, and policy are the top three. You know, and that infrastructure one is literally just like, is it all working? Does it all talk to each other? Does it do what we need it to do? And that's like, is it doing what it says on the tin? You know, and a lot of that, you start with this idea that, it might be. And then, you go through my framework and you very much suddenly decide, no, actually it isn't doing what we want it to do. And then you're like, well, maybe I've got to ask more questions about this. And then the next one is just like, have we really integrated it into our school in a way that works? I think there's lots of benefits. Like, I am not like, and I think that'll probably be, you know, somebody said to me about, you're probably going to need to write a book on this. And I was like, you know, one of the first things I'll probably say is I am not a Luddite, because I am really not a Luddite. I am so far away from being a Luddite. Like literally, guys, I am like one of the founding members of the makerspace movement in the UK. Like, so there's no kind of way you can be like, oh yeah, but we have lots of problems with how we've implemented tech. And we kind of need to clean house a bit with that. And especially in things like our ethics, our, you know, social media has been an absolute nightmare for us. You know, how we use tech in schools has got to get more robust than this. And I think at the moment it's been a bit of a, you know, how to describe it? It's been a bit, you know, a bit of a cowboy land, you know, where everybody can do anything.
I was just going to say Wild West. Wild West.
I'm trying to struggle with the word, but it has. Where everybody's been everything and everybody's got very excited and adopted everything. But that tech overkill is kind of killing the good stuff. Do you know what I mean? And there's plenty of good stuff, you know, really good stuff. But the way that we've kind of just adopted everything all over the place has made it very, very difficult to see what is good stuff and what isn't. And I think it's having a really detrimental kind of experience to the way our teachers and head teachers and everybody experiences tech. You know, I said a difficult relationship. I think it is a difficult relationship. We like it, but we don't like it. We trust it, but we don't. I don't really like the way a lot of my experts described the uneasiness of the relationship that they have with tech companies. They want to adopt it, but then they can't call it out. They want to say this is good, but then they can't do this. It's very, can be very, you know, shadows and daggers type of stuff. And, you know, it seems to be all in mine at the moment. But I think that we've got an opportunity to be a bit more crystal clear about what our expectations are. These are our schools. You know, we're the educators. We're the ones in charge. You know, we should be really clear cut about what our expectations are from tech. And, you know, vote with our feet, so to speak.
That's a brilliant place just to finish off there. I think that's a really great key point, just that we should be thinking with our feet and we should be voting with our feet. And if something's working, great. If not, let's peel everything back and actually have a think about what works for us.
What's the magic wand? What is the magic wand?
There isn't a magic wand. That's the thing. There isn't. What I'd like to say with that one is it is very much vote with your feet.
Yeah.
But if you find something that you absolutely love, you talk noisy about it.
Yes.
You get behind it. You talk why it's good and why it works and what is great about it.
Yeah.
You put it to the test. But we've got to get, as much as I hate to say it, a bit more noisy about what isn't working.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I think we tend to shy away from that a little. Yeah. We're like, well, this works wonderfully, but what didn't work? Well, I can't really tell you what didn't work because I don't know whether I want to get in trouble with that. And I'm not too sure about whether that is something I want to say.
In the research, I don't know if you're able to go into exact softwares or exact tools. Were there any tools that kept coming up that people were like, I love using... for example, I love using Google Sheets, or I love using the app.
I've tried to keep it general because I've tried to be apolitical here a little.
Yeah.
So I've tried to tell you the type of tech, but not the brand.
Not exactly.
So, so the type of tech that absolutely came up all the time was speech to text.
Sure.
Oh, we love speech to text.
Yep.
We love speech to text. We love accessibility tech. That's why I'm banging on about it.
Yep.
We love captions. We love being able to kind of like take the material and put it into kind of audio formats for students. That works outright.
Sure. Yeah.
And actually there's a fascinating move. Well, so there's a leap from there, isn't there? That like audio, great. But what about like video?
Yeah.
Like where do we go next?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you think about AI video creation, like there's so many opportunities in education there, aren't there?
Yeah. So there was a lot in there that was like the translation of materials, if you can imagine it. Yeah. So we call it that kind of tech. And it's that accessible translation that was the big winner. In all the kinds of across all the sort of tech that we could possibly use, they were the ones that were the most winning. And it's understandable because, and I think I say in there, I don't know whether I'm in the middle of an edit, so I may keep this, may not. Learning goes on in your head.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's going on in your head. It is not going on a screen, on a keyboard, in a program.
Sure.
It's going on in your head. So that the most, all tech should be really geared to kind of link into giving us the variety of formats that we may need to be able to hook into it. That's the biggest gains we can get.
Yeah.
And it's so easy now, isn't it?
Data monitoring some kid, randomly with a tick board. That's not going to do anything.
Sure.
And you do see a lot of that, lots of data dashboards to monitor kids. But there was a lot of feedback there that was like, well, what do we use them for?
Yeah.
What do you monitor them for?
Yeah.
Are we monitoring them so you can tell a teacher that little Jimmy isn't performing very well when teacher already knows little Jimmy isn't performing very well and why little Jimmy isn't performing very well? And that's the difference. A teacher would innately know from their class who was performing and who isn't performing and why.
Sure.
A data dashboard will just tell you the numbers.
Yeah.
And that's another thing we kind of got to... why are we tracking all of this? What is the purpose of tracking?
Because some government organisation wants us to, basically.
And I understand from government, if they really want tracking, they can have it. But is it telling us anything that we need to know? Things like, the Neurodivergent Nest study told us a lot about, and lots of other studies that have come out about, SEND kids and why they aren't attending school. The assessment dashboard, for, school attendance will just tell you the number.
Sure.
And this is why one of the things I wanted to do was give all the teachers who spoke to me the opportunity to honestly tell me what was going on with no fear, no repercussions, and absolute honesty. And they really did. But it was quite a frightening picture in places.
Sure. What is the kind of data around SEND pupils not going to school and that? Because there is a massive pattern of this, isn't there? Of school non-attendance.
There is a massive chunk of I can't tell you the exact figures off the top of my head, but there is a massive chunk of school neurodivergent students and SEND students in non-attendance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of it I think really is because we've very much geared ourselves up to all students should perform the same on attendance. And it's kind of problematic. And I think it's problematic because, and it really leads to what everybody told me about SEND students, to be honest, it's expectations. You know, so we have expectation that kids should attend school, 95%, you know, of their attendance should be there. And therefore, this autistic kid should attend 95%. But, you know, I think a report came out today on neurodivergent young people experiencing much more school burden, emotional burden. It's unrealistic to expect that of neurodivergent kids. They go through phases where you're totally productive for, 4 months, but then you have 2-3 weeks of burnout that's absolutely awful that you can't stand.
Yeah. And is this new? Is this like, so one of the things I've noticed is a link between COVID and not being at school and almost making people aware of the fact that you could actually learn out with that building, out with those hours. And is this something, has there been research on that?
I think there's been a bit, but I think that started happening before COVID. I think COVID was just kind of the nail in the coffin with that.
Sure.
You know, I think you'd started to get this kind of, they're almost canaries in the coal mine. You know, when the school gets a little too demanding, you know, and the environment isn't very inclusive, you know, your neurodivergent kids go first. And I think, to be honest, there was quite a difficulty coping with COVID. And also, I think, you know, even just as somebody who is autistic, you know, lots of people had the experience of going home during COVID and it was absolutely awful. Many neurodivergents went home and thought, oh my God, how do I live outside again? You know, what have I been doing all this time out there when I could have been in here and so much better on my nervous system? So there's something to be said for, like, you know, gearing yourself back up into going into the outside world, because it is incredibly demanding, sensory, emotionally, noise, sound, everything. It is just hard work. You know, I limit my social arrangements, you know, so when you're doing it day in, day out at school, and you forget they're very geared schools in this kind of way that doesn't sit with monotropism. Monotropism is like this idea where you are effectively, if you're autistic or neurodivergent in some way, especially autistic, somewhat ADHDs, you tend to have focus in like channels, like you focus on one thing for a long amount of time.
Definitely.
Right? But our school is designed in a way that's snappy. 50 minutes in English, 50 minutes in maths, 50 minutes in this.
You don't get into the flow of anything, do you?
I can't get into the flow of anything. I've only just got to the grips with the maths and now we're in English. So I think, to be honest, there's something to be said for, you know, being in environments that fit that kind of monotropism kind of flow, where you know, today's all about English, you know what I mean? Today's all about maths. And I think that would be better. You do see that in some units within schools. I've seen lots of school units that are attached, or APUs that are attached, that do a very good job of that. And SEND schools, we can learn a lot from SEND schools and the way they do it.
I agree.
But I think the problem is with it is that we've got so hung up on like school attendance that we've not questioned why these kids are not attending, which is really the bigger question.
Like, maybe we should make it better.
Maybe. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think at the moment I'm kind of like, I'm sort of hopeful about maybe we'll see different changes with SEND, but there is a lot of risks with that, about how we'll go about doing that. If it becomes like, you know, we make normal schools more inclusive, but does then kind of restrict the access to specialist care that some kids actually need. So there's a lot of problematic risks with doing it. But I think the biggest one really is that, you know, we don't include SEND kids or SEND adults in any of the discussions. You know, I think I had a right grumble a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, in a massive grumble. And it's so much so that a few of my experts reached out and was like, are you okay, Carl? I was like, no, I'm going to kill everybody. Like, and I put up a video and I was like, when we talk about AI, we've got to start talking about disability and inclusion with it. Like stop talking about it without us. Why are you doing this? You talk about it as if like it doesn't affect us, as if like it's going to be this wonderful trick that's just going to make everything wonderful, and completely ignore the fact that it's not suitable for like 20% of the population. Like, why are you doing this? And it was like, And that's the thing, you've got to, nothing about us without us is a motto for a reason, because many times we'll highlight to you the concerns within certain systems that you'd probably only see if you were neurodivergent or disabled. And I see it all the time when people are like, oh, this tech is absolutely wonderful. I'm like, well, let me just point that out to you that maybe there might be an issue there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with it. We do need to see more variety of people giving guidance.
Sure.
Disabled teachers, Black teachers, people of colour. It's got to be better than it currently is, because quite a lot of the time, I'm quite often, when I go and talk on panels, I'm like the only autistic on the panel, like flying one autism flag, like, come on, let's go. Sometimes it's just nice, because I know there are plenty of neurodivergent teachers out and leaders out there, but they're not as confident enough to say they are, because we create this environment in which they don't feel comfortable in.
No.
And we've kind of got to move away, I think, a bit from that.
Sure.
So I think it's not just voting with your feet with the tech, it's questioning whether that tech is inclusive and demanding that it be more inclusive if it isn't.
Yeah.
And I'd also say as well, we need to move away from this teacher expectation that we're all lovely and have all the time for tech to help them in the world. We don't.
No.
Teachers don't have that kind of time. Pay them.
Yeah.
Pay them.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. The days of freebie for tech companies are done. I don't want anybody doing that anymore. I spent several weeks developing this curriculum for a tech company for stickers and t-shirts. No, mate. Pay them.
Yeah. Yes.
That's a good point. People give up a lot for stickers and t-shirts.
I know, but I want you to stop, because it's not really then. It undervalues what we have to offer.
Sure.
And I think that's the issue with it. We have to raise the level of our expertise in pedagogical practice and teaching to match the level of expertise the tech people have.
Yep.
And I sit in both worlds, so I know what level of expertise they have, but our level of expertise is just as equivalent.
It's equally valuable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it's not like we're not specialists. We are absolutely specialists.
Yeah.
So we really should be kind of demanding, the equal weighting in that kind of tech, so to speak. So, when you deciding on what you want to pick, what tech things you want to get in, get people in, ask for a grilling, demand things that you want. You're more than capable of doing that. And we have a duty to students to do that.
Yeah.
Really, that's a better place to start.
No, that's a great. Love it. Absolutely.
Caroline, thank you so much. That's fascinating. Where are you at in your PhD?
I'm literally right at the end, guys. So it should be by November. You should have this out. So that's my final deadline, because I just moved out, so I'd extended. So I am gonna try and get it out there as quickly as possible to everybody as soon as it's done.
Great.
It's probably a ridiculously big read, so I'm probably going to post it with a list that says basically, if you're a teacher, read this chapter, and this chapter. Because if you're an AI scientist, read this chapter, this chapter, this chapter.
That's a really good idea, actually.
Because mine is interdisciplinary. So I'm in the engineering department using AI, specializing in teaching. So it's actually an engineering PhD I'll have, but in AI, but in education. So you don't need to read the whole thing. I'll make sure that teachers know which ones are the bits they can, but I'm more excited really that everybody can just go out and use the tool then, and be able to be like, right, this is what I think my school is. What do you reckon would be the most beneficial for my school? And then go through the questions and be like, right, where do we sit?
Sure.
And then that way they can get a better idea of what really works for schools. And these were real schools. Everybody in the expert group and everybody who contributed to all the questionnaires all mapped out in real detail the environments that they felt and what they felt it was like. And it does kind of sit in a kind of way of an infrastructure, a pedagogical, a policy and ethical, and then what I've called a bridge layer, which is really teacher workload, learning outcomes. They're your two Like, they're the two real metrics of whether a tech is working or not.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good.
Have you got learning outcomes? And is the teacher workload manageable? You want to know whether tech's working or not? Those two will tell you whether it's working or not.
And that's a big thing I've noticed is the teacher workload thing with certain AIs. Like, that's why it's getting such adoption, isn't it? The workload is zero.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with it. But I think if you get too much tech, your workload takes a peak up and then falls down a bit and then takes another peak up.
Yeah.
If you hit the tech just at the right point,
the sweet spot, you can get it where you get good learning outcomes and a reduction in teacher workload. Mm-hmm. But if you hit it too much tech or too much input all at once, you've just got too much workload. And you'll get that peak where you may get outcomes that are good for learning outcomes, but they will be short-lived. It'll go up and come right back down. And you'll have a nice system. You'll be able to judge that for yourself on a nice graph that you'll be able to see for your own school when I'm done. So, I'll make sure that it's out there for everybody to use so they can all judge your own deck.
Brilliant.
Well, we better let you get back to work, Caroline, because you've got a busy couple of months ahead of you.
Yeah, this is probably I've got you, and I think I'm down in Westminster like in October. I've got like 1 or 2 talks and that's it. So basically I'm going to be in a hole, like finishing up writing.
Do you want us to just send you, we'll send you positive encouragement.
Send me positive encouragement, guys. Anybody who's listening, be like, go, Caroline, go.
And hopefully
hopefully
you've got someone to make you cups of tea.
Oh God, yeah. My entire family is on PhD duty this
month.
Love it. So all they are doing is making me tea and organising me and keeping me on track. So
amazing.
I've had, and so big thanks to everybody who's been encouraging me, and mostly to all of my teachers. God, all of the profession has been encouraging me quietly, left, right, and centre with this. So I'm really thankful for all of them to give them the trust to do it. Great. So send love. I'll get there eventually.
Yeah. I'm sure our listeners do as well, sending you all the best kind of thoughts for a few months of productive PhDing.
Yes.
Love it.
I'm hoping so.
And then are you going to be Dr. Caroline after that then?
Yeah, I'll be Dr. Keep. Which is weird as hell. So that'll be a new one. So Dr. Keep. That sounds like something Dr. like Dr. Seuss, doesn't it?
It does. I like it.
Do you know what I mean? So of course, I'm probably gonna be that person that kind of calls herself Dr. Keep on a post like once, and then anytime anybody actually calls me Dr. Keep, I'll laugh.
You're like, who?
I'm not actually that person. Don't worry about it.
I'd got the sense of that.
I know I've got the doctorate, but I'm cool without the whole title thing.
I love it. Well, Caroline, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Caroline, thank you so much for joining us for the Digitize Fully Charged podcast. We really do appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. Thank you so much as well for joining us for today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, we would really appreciate any ratings that you give us. So 5 stars, if you think it's a 5-star podcast. We would really appreciate it on any of the kind of podcast sites, so like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. And if you are watching the YouTube video, please do subscribe to the channel, like, share, comment. I know it sounds very cliche to ask people to do that, but honestly, it makes the world of difference, and it makes our hearts grow just that little bit more, knowing that we've got those people who are enjoying the work that we are putting out. So thank you so much. We're so proud of this podcast, and we just want to share it with the world. So thank you for helping us do that. If you are on social media, please do take a wee screenshot, let us know you've been watching as well. Just tag us at Digitize Crew, and we're on every form of possible social media. So you'll find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, absolutely everywhere. So please do tag us at Digitize Crew. And thank you again so much for joining us. It makes us so proud to know that our wee podcast is being listened to. So thank you again, and we'll see you for our next episode. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.